My neighbor has always been a nightmare, but this time she went over the top. Annoyed that I didn't follow the HOA's ridiculous rules, she decided to take revenge in the worst possible way, by installing nail strips in my garage to destroy my tires. I already knew that my neighbor was unbearable. From the day I moved into this neighborhood, she made it clear that she thought she owned the place. The kind of person who even inspects the grass in other people's yards, timing how long a car can be parked on the street before calling the HOA. But what I didn't know was that she was capable of sabotaging someone. And I found that out the hard way. It was a normal day. I woke up early, had my coffee, and got ready to leave the house. But when I got into the car and started to reverse out of the garage, something strange happened. The car jerked, then another, and then there was the dry sound of something breaking. My stomach sank. I got out of the car and bent down to look at the tires. And that's when I saw the problem. Bands of nails. Yes, someone, and I knew exactly who, had put nail strips right outside my garage. I stood there for a few seconds, just staring at the scene, trying to process the level of insanity that was before my eyes. Who does something like that? Who wakes up in the morning and decides that the best way to solve any problem in life is to put traps in other people's way? The answer was obvious. I slowly turned my face towards the house next door, and there she was, my dear neighbor, in her garden, holding a cup of coffee, watching everything as if it were a well-planned TV program. The look in her eyes said it all. She wanted me to know, and I wanted to know what exactly had gone through her head to make her think this was a good idea. I took a deep breath and looked at the tires again. 2 completely destroyed. And best of all, I had an important appointment that morning. It was clear that this was no accident. Someone had put those tracks there on purpose, and there was only one person in this neighborhood crazy enough to try to sabotage me like that. And if she wanted a war, she was going to have one. But first, I needed proof. I stood there, staring at the blown-out tires, feeling a wave of anger surge through my body like an uncontrolled wildfire. I wanted to march up to that woman and ask her if she had completely lost her grip on reality, but something held me back. If I exploded now, she would win. People like her feed on chaos. The kind of people who live to turn minor inconveniences into neighborhood wars and then play the victim when the going gets tough. If I showed up on her doorstep shouting, she'd make a scene, pretend she didn't know anything, and in the end, make me look like the aggressor. I needed to be smarter. I took one last deep breath and went into the house. I picked up my phone, called a tow truck, and, while I waited, began to plan my revenge. But first, I needed proof. I grabbed my laptop and went straight to the security camera system I had installed a few months ago, and, oh, what a wonderful spectacle I found there. The video showed everything. At around 3 in the morning, my dear neighbor sneaked out of her house, carrying something large wrapped in a black bag. She looked around, made sure no one was watching, and, with the delicacy of a fifth-rate criminal, laid the nail strips right outside my garage. Then he returned home as if nothing had happened. "I caught you, you bastard." I left the video running several times, feeling that satisfying sensation of knowing you've just won a game before it's even started. The tow truck arrived about half an hour later. The driver looked at the tires and let out a whistle. "Someone doesn't like you very much, huh?" I laughed humorlessly. "You could say that." While he was taking the car away, I knew exactly what I needed to do. First, I went to the nearest auto parts store and bought new tires. Expensive? Yes, but nothing compared to what this woman was going to pay. Then I took the opportunity to buy something special, a little device that would make my revenge even sweeter. When I got home, I installed new cameras, strategically placed to ensure that any suspicious movement near my garage would be captured more clearly. And the final touch? A small sensor that would send a direct alert to my phone if anyone dared approach my driveway again. Now, all I had to do was wait, and I knew that sooner or later she would try something, because people like her can't stop. The next day, my garage was spotless. No nail tracks, no visible damage. Just the calm certainty that my trap was set, and my patience would pay off. The neighborhood went on as usual, with the same routines as always, but I knew something was about to happen. It was inevitable. People like her can't bear to lose without trying to get revenge. I carried on with my life as normal. I went to the market, worked, washed the new car with the newly replaced tires, and pretended that everything was absolutely normal. But every time I passed the yard, I felt those eyes burning into my back. She was expecting some reaction, some outburst from me, but she got nothing but silence. Night came, and I knew it was only a matter of time. Like a patient hunter waiting for his prey, I just had to wait for the right time. At around 3 in the morning, just like last time, my phone vibrated. The sensor I had installed sent an automatic notification. Movement detected in the driveway. I got out of bed without hurrying. Without turning on any lights, I picked up my phone and opened the camera's live feed. There she was, the same pathetic scene as before, moving as if she were in a spy movie, looking sideways, carrying yet another black bag. It was almost comical. This time, however, there was an extra detail. She wasn't alone. Another neighbor, one of the oldest on the street, was coming home from a night shift at the hospital and saw the whole thing happen. He stopped at the curb, frowned, and watched as she bent down to put the nails in my garage one more time. I couldn't have planned a better witness. And then, the best possible thing happened. Before I had to leave the house, before I even had to get out of bed, the neighbor picked up his cell phone and did exactly what any sensible person would do. He called the police. I could hardly contain my excitement. I continued to watch on the camera as she, without realizing it, finished positioning the nail strips with the peace of mind of someone who thinks they'll never be caught. And then, less than 10 minutes later, the first blue and red lights illuminated the street. The police car pulled up slowly, its headlights sweeping the sidewalk. I wanted to laugh out loud. The big moment had arrived. She froze in place. She tried to pull herself together, but it was too late. 2 policemen got out of the car, approached her, and before she could make any excuse, the neighbor stepped forward, pointing at the scene as if he were narrating a National Geographic documentary. I got dressed and calmly left the house, crossing the street with the calmness of someone who knew exactly what was about to happen. One of the policemen turned to me. "Are you the owner of this house?" I crossed my arms and nodded. "Yes, I am. And as it happens, I have all the security camera footage showing this happening before, too." The woman's expression changed completely. Her self-confidence evaporated. For the first time, she realized how big a mess she had gotten herself into. She tried to explain herself, of course. She said that it was to keep the neighborhood safe, that it was a warning, and that the rules had to be followed. The policemen looked at each other, and one of them sighed, already tired of that kind of excuse. She still tried to argue, but there was no way out. It was then that I saw the most beautiful thing I had ever seen in the neighborhood. The handcuffs shone in the headlights, and then, with all the dignity of a sack of potatoes being thrown into a trunk, she was escorted to the police car. I didn't have to say anything. I just watched as the door was closed and the car slowly drove off. My garage was safe. My peace was restored. And above all, I knew that she would never try anything like this again. The street was a little quieter that morning, without the annoying sound of that woman's heels tapping against the sidewalk, without her constant complaints about how the neighborhood was getting out of hand, without her superior eyes scanning every corner of the street as if she were an enforcement officer. It was a relief I didn't even know I needed. She had been taken away by the police a few hours earlier, but I knew that didn't mean the end. People like her don't accept losing. They don't reflect on their mistakes. They don't learn lessons. They don't apologize. They look for someone to blame. And I knew exactly who she would blame. But, to my surprise, it wasn't her who appeared first. I was still sipping my coffee when someone knocked on the door. When I opened it, I saw a man in a cheap suit, holding a briefcase and trying to look intimidating. "You've been formally notified," he said, handing me an envelope. I took the paper without haste, opened it, and took a quick look at the contents. It was obvious. There she was, trying to sue me. This time, the accusations were even more absurd. Defamation, invasion of privacy, and best of all, stalking. I almost laughed right there, in her lawyer's face. Right, I folded the paper and put it in my pocket. "So, since we're talking about stalking, I assume you've seen the videos?" The lawyer looked at me as if he'd been taken by surprise. "Videos? Of course. She didn't tell you that part." "Yes, the videos. From the security cameras. The 2 times she put nail strips in my garage. The same videos that were handed over to the police." His face lost a little color. "Well, that's something that will be analyzed in court." "That's perfect," I smiled. "It'll be fun to see the judge watching this." He sniffled, clearly uncomfortable. I'll be in touch." And he left. I sat on the sofa, finished my coffee, and waited for the inevitable moment when she would finally appear. Because, of course, she wouldn't give in to a ridiculous lawsuit. She needed to play the victim herself. And indeed, a few hours later, there she was, even after spending the night at the police station. With her pride shattered and a fresh criminal record, she still had the audacity to come to my house. The door had barely been opened, and she had already started pouring out accusations. "You ruined my life." Oh, what a wonderful sentence to hear. I crossed my arms and just stared. "Oh, yes, of course. Because I'm the one who put nails in your driveway, right?" She blushed, but stood her ground. "I was protecting the community." I rolled my eyes. "You were caught on video." "It doesn't matter." I held in my laughter. "Doesn't matter?" For this woman, the facts were irrelevant. What mattered was that she had lost, and she couldn't bear that. "There will be consequences," she growled. "You'll pay for all this." I took a step back and cracked a lazy smile. "Well, if you want to discuss it in court, go ahead. But I suggest you save your money to pay the fine you're going to get." She opened her mouth, then closed it, then opened it again. It was the first time I'd seen someone hiss with rage. And then, unable to fight back, she just walked away. She didn't run. She didn't stomp her feet. She didn't shout. She just turned and walked away. And that's when I knew. She was finished. The whole neighborhood already knew the story. Everyone had seen the videos. She had spent years trying to control everyone. But now, no one took a word that came out of her mouth seriously. Over the next few weeks, the woman disappeared. She no longer attended HOA meetings, went around the street inspecting houses, or tried to give random orders. It was as if her spirit had been drained along with her dignity. The neighbors even commented, surprised by the sudden silence. Someone even said that she was locked inside the house, avoiding any contact with the outside world. The queen of the HOA had lost her crown, and now didn't seem to know how to live without it. And eventually, the inevitable happened. Her house was put up for sale. At first, there were rumors that she just wanted to get rid of the place and start over in another neighborhood. But the truth was simpler. Nobody wanted to live where they weren't welcome. The isolation, the suspicious looks, the gossip from neighbors who once feared her and now ridiculed her. All of this accumulated until she no longer had a choice. She was leaving. The days passed and the visits from buyers began. Some would stop on the sidewalk, looking at the house with interest, but all it took was for a neighbor to mention her history, for many to lose enthusiasm. Still, after a while, the sold sign appeared in the yard, and it was one of the best days of my life. The news spread fast. On moving day, a few neighbors appeared on their balconies, discreetly watching as the furniture was loaded onto the truck. No goodbyes were said. No warm goodbyes took place. She left exactly as she deserved, ignored. And when I finally saw her move off, carrying all that toxic energy with her, I did what anyone would do to celebrate victory. I grabbed a good cup of coffee, sat on the balcony and watched, satisfied, as that woman disappeared from my life forever. And don't forget to leave a like and comment on what you think of each video.